We'll be talking about that in just a minute. We are in the middle of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. And he's been talking to the people. Started out with the Beatitudes, blessed are you, or happy are you, when. And he gave all these examples, things that just were upside down to the way they were at that time. And actually, they weren't upside down. The practices that people were taught and were living were upside down and backwards to God's original intentions. And Jesus goes through and he picks out a few well-known examples of the law and says, you've heard it said, you shall not kill, but I tell you that even if you're angry with your brother in your heart, if you carry resentments and do not forgive, then you're guilty. And he goes through and gives some examples of how we might feel towards each other and how we should act towards each other, keeping our promises, not breaking oaths that we make to each other, including the marriage covenant. So here, Jesus kind of makes a little bit of shift from how the people would act towards each other to the things that people would do for God, the things that they thought were pleasing to God. Jesus called it practicing their righteousness or practicing their piety. And so the acts of righteousness that the Jewish people had at that time, there were three primary acts through which people practiced their faith. It was giving alms, praying, and fasting. By the way, alms, it really just refers to any kind of a righteous deed, usually giving money to the church or to poor people, but it also included if you were giving clothes, if you gave some food to someone, if you did a kind act towards someone, that was considered a giving of alms, or almsgiving. And that Greek word for almsgiving comes from the root words of mercy and pity. So showing mercy and pity to someone. Jesus starts in, he says, be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others to be seen by them. If you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. So, whenever you give alms, or whenever you practice your giving, and whatever that may be, do not sound a trumpet before you as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, so that they may be praised by others. Truly I tell you, they have received their rewards. So, a couple things I want to point out here. Jesus says, when you give, he doesn't say if you give. Jesus expected his followers to give. Whether it's money, or whether it's goods, it's out of their abundance, things that they had to help others in need. So, is it okay, the question, is it okay to let others know that we have given to the poor for a good cause? Do our deeds need to be done in secret? Matthew chapter 5, verse 16, Jesus, just earlier in the sermon, Jesus says, in the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. So is there a contradiction here? Well, the answer is obvious if you just kind of give it a careful reading. We've already seen this. It really depends on your motive. When Jesus tells us to shine so that people can see our good works, he's saying so that glory can be given to God, not to us. We all desire to be respected by others. We all desire for other people to admire us. That's a natural feeling that we all have. But Jesus says that we need to make sure that the reason we are giving is not like the Pharisees' reasons. So Jesus called the Pharisees hypocrites. The Greek word hypocritai, hypocrite is our word for it. It's a word for an actor in a play at that time. That was the Greek word for it. And Jesus is saying that the Pharisees and the religious leaders, they were mostly just actors. They were acting like they were very pious and righteous by doing their good deeds before others so they could be seen. But their heart really wasn't there. They weren't doing it for God. And Jesus tells them, and he tells us, that the praise of others is the only reward that those people are going to get when they give or help with wrong motives. So, by the way, no trumpet was sounded when people were giving. They didn't play the trumpet as people brought their gifts in. Jesus he's doing as he has done all throughout the sermon. He's speaking hyperbole, it's exaggerated speech to get his point across. And it's people that call attention to themselves so that others could see. When they're about to give and the synagogue, like, oh, excuse me, just I got something in my throat, calling attention, then let me just put my little offering in here, and they plink out the big bag of coins so that everybody can see what they're giving. Jesus says, but when you give alms, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. Again, hyperbole, right, your left hand. And I was trying to think, do we have like what is there really a correlation I could think of? And all I could think of was, as a musician playing the piano, sometimes you do something in your left hand that's very different than what you're playing in your right. A good drummer, you've seen a set drummer, they can have 4 different things going on. They got one thing going on with one foot, one thing going on with another, something with that. They have 4 different things going on. It's not really what Jesus was talking about, but I was trying to think of an example of that. Jesus said, when you give alms, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your alms, or your alms giving, may be done in secret, and your Father, who sees in secret, will reward you. Once again, Jesus, of course, speaking in hyperbole. So, where is the line drawn between doing good deeds or giving money to those in need because we hope for a reward from God, and doing them between that and because God just merely calls us to? And I would say, it is okay if you're doing something kind for others or giving money to the church, tithing, as the video was about. It's okay if you're hoping for a reward from God when you do that. God promises us a reward for our faithfulness. God promises to reward us when we give to Him and when we help others. This is a promise from God. So it is okay for us to desire that and look forward to that reward from God. But once again, we have to check our motives. If giving or helping is only done because you are hoping for that reward and you know you're going to get more, if it's like a little math problem for you, well, if I give this much, God's going to give me this. Well, those are wrong motives. We're called to give out of love for God and for others. By the way, we have a way that you can give to the church without sounding a trumpet. Not that any of you do. I'm being facetious, of course. But online giving. And I know many of you have already signed up for this, and thank you. For those that haven't, I just want to say, online giving ensures that you are still supporting us if you happen to be gone or traveling on a Sunday when you might normally do it. So as that video, it's just, obviously it's humorous, but as they point out, everything we do in the church, it costs money. And costs, unfortunately, have been going up and up, especially in these last few years. And so we hope that you will continue to support us so that we can have bulletins, so that we can have the toilets. I thought that was funny. You had the pages to open the stall door. For the sound, we're getting some new speakers because one of these speakers is bad. And so, I mean, everything costs money. So I want to say thank you. This is a generous church. You guys have been generous, but I want to just thank you ahead of time for your continued generosity. Jesus continues, he says, and when you pray, do not be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and on the street corners to be seen by others. Truly I tell you, they have received their reward in full. But when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen. then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. I was preparing for this and remembered back when I was in college and I joined this group called InterVarsity Christian Fellowship. And I was there one morning, I had this really rich prayer time. And God truly met me there, and I was just praying and praising Him. And it turned into about a 2-hour prayer time. And it was just this really great time I connected with God. Well, later in the day, when I went to the InterVarsity meeting, I was talking to people. Somehow, I don't know how, but somehow in conversations, it just came up that, boy, did I have this rich prayer time earlier, and I had prayed for 2 hours and really felt God speaking to me. And did I mention that it was 2 hours long? And guess what? I had a new girlfriend that week, which lasted about 3 weeks, and then she realized I was not as holy as I portrayed myself to be, and so that was over. My point is, we all desire the praise of others, and boy, doesn't that feel good. But that's not what we really want, is it? The praise of man, the praise of others is short and fleeting, but the rewards from God are eternal. For some, prayer may seem uncomfortable. And it's hard for me to believe this, but I still have, every church I've been at, people come up to me and we're talking, Pastor, will you pray for me? For sure, I'd be happy to. And they say, I don't know how to talk to God. They just feel like they don't know how to pray or talk to Him. And I thought about this and thought, well, for some, their attitude towards prayer and their thought towards prayer is about the same feelings I had when I first started playing the piano. And I was forced to practice. We had to practice a half an hour every day. My dad would make me and my brothers practice our instruments. And I would often play, and sometimes I enjoyed the practice, but many times I did not enjoy it. I did it because I had to. But over time, as I had learned my scales and learned the chords and learned to play the notes, over time, I was able to play without thinking about all of the mechanics of it. And I could truly enjoy playing the music because I wasn't thinking and focused on the little things. And prayer is like that. When we develop the discipline of prayer, all of a sudden, some point in our journey, we can get away from the feeling uncomfortable, get away from the making sure we're doing it right, and we can enter into a conversation with God, a God who calls us to come to Him in prayer. We're going to talk more about that next week. So, Jesus continues on in verse 16. He says, when you fast, do not look somber as the hypocrites do, for they disfigure their faces to show others they are fasting. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward in full. Think back again to this time I was in college and some friends were having lunch and another friend came up to us and he sat down. He says, oh, that hamburger, boy, that looks really good. And those fries, those smell so good. I bet those are tasty. And so we kind of, we're like, well, why don't you go get some lunch? Oh, no, I can't do that. I'm fasting. Well, we laughed, but the point was the same. He wanted us to know he was fasting, right? Jesus said, but when you fast, put oil on your head and wash your face, so that it will not be obvious to others you are fasting, but only to your Father who is unseen. And your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. Many of us don't fast. It's just not something that many Christians do today. And why fast? Why would we fast? Well, there's several reasons. One is that self-denial, even for a short period of time, can help us with our humility. When we're denying ourselves something that we want, something that we're craving, it helps us humble ourselves. The second thing, more importantly, is that it helps us keep our focus on God. The idea of fasting is not that God wants you to be hungry. The idea of fasting is that if you're fasting a meal, by the way, fasting, you can fast a meal. You could fast several meals. You could fast all day long if you wanted to. But that's not all fasting is. You could fast from something. For example, if you love to have a cup of coffee in the morning, or maybe you love that glass of sweet tea with lunch every day, you could fast from that. And the idea is that when you are thinking about that thing that you want, that sweet tea with your lunch instead of water, when you think about that, the idea is you would stop and then you would pray, that your thoughts would then go towards God. Now, cutting out that cup of coffee in the morning, you might be crabby towards everybody all day, so maybe not that one. But there are things we can fast from. You can fast from electronics. You can fast from your phone for 10 minutes, right? You wouldn't want to go too long without your phone on you. But the idea is that when you think about that, oh, I wish I could pick up my phone and check whatever, social media, that you would then take a moment to stop and pray. If you fast, but you just go right throughout your day, you don't take a moment to stop, you don't take time to focus on God and pray, I would argue that what is the point of that? Almost worthless. So there are other reasons showing God that we're serious about this. God, I want to bring this thing to you in prayer, and I'm going to fast from this. I just want to show you that I'm serious. Now, that's more about us than it is about God. But let's be honest. Maybe it would be okay sometimes for us to think in our heads, I'm serious about this, and what do I need to do to get serious? Because I think that for some of us, it is too easy to just be lazy. Lazy in our prayer life. Lazy in our Christian faith. So I think that what Jesus is doing here as he's talking about the acts of righteousness is he is testing the reality of God in our lives. It's easy to do something religious if other people are watching, right? Because, they're going to think great about me if I do this thing or if I pray this well-sounded, eloquent prayer, right? Praying, attending church, being kind to others. It's easy to do that when others are watching. But what if no one's watching? What if no one's going to know that you gave? What if no one's going to know that you went and helped out? We are called to be salt and light so that glory is given to God. And yet, we are also called to practice our acts of righteousness when no one is around, when no one is watching it. We are called to seek the reward of God and not the reward of man, because man's praise is fleeting, but God's rewards are eternal. Please pray with me. Heavenly Father, we do love you honestly and sincerely in our hearts. That's why we're here this morning. That's why we came. We came to worship you. Father, would you help us to keep that zeal for you all week long? Would you help us to check our motives as we're doing our acts of righteousness? Would you help us to not be seeking the praise of others, but instead that we would be humbly submitting our hearts and our lives before you, serving you and others out of love. We ask this in Jesus' name.